New year, new resolutions on Spirit Spire starting right now.
Broadcasting from the Cathedral of the Assumption in Louisville, Kentucky, this is Spirit Spire. And now, here is your host.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another awesome episode of Spirit Spire. Today I'm your host, John Sohl, and with me is my co-host, Erik Huff.
Hey, John.
Hey, Erik, and we're going to be talking today about New Year's resolutions, specifically through the Catholic lens, because we're seeing a big movement in the church of all kinds of different new things that are happening, and a lot of them take place starting in January. Think of Bible in a Year that happened a couple years ago, and a lot of people jump in January as well. Catechism in a Year is now actively underway. Thank you, Father Mike Schmitz and Ascension, right? But then you have Exodus 90, which he traditionally starts in January, leading up to the 90 days before Easter, among so many other great initiatives that we're starting to see. So
and even other new stuff that people adopt as their New Year's resolution. I know Liturgy of the Hours. Bishop Barron,
spiritual Word on exercises, Fire. Devotions. Bishop Barron has things.
Yeah.
And so you can look at it not so much as I'm just going to work out and get fit, which is pretty common, but more like a spiritual workout, learning how to pray more, rest more, learn how to, get away from the distractions a little bit more.
And get physically fit.
At
the same time,
Exodus 90 has a great workout plan, and I used to do P90X, the workout, with my brother-in-law and brother, and I even tried it again last year on top of Exodus 90, but I learned that was a mistake because it was a little overwhelming, and so you can usually allow yourself to get overwhelmed by all these new things you want to try, and you end up doing almost none of them if you do too much.
They just all blow up at once.
Right. So what I've learned about with Exodus 90's workout program is that it's 3 days a week, and it's a little bit more manageable because you're not just trying to get physically fit. You're trying to get holistically fit, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and physically, so that you can be truly human and healthy and happy and normal, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Or at least what's normal for you and I might be different than for everybody else.
That's true, right. But I don't know. I look at resolutions not from a secular point of view where anybody can pick whatever they want to do and give it a try, but more like I think everyone is, we're all human. We all want to be happy, and we're all trying to better ourselves, or at least that's what resolutions are meant to do.
Right.
But you can get into it to where my understanding of happy or healthy or human even can be actually detrimental to my health.
Yeah.
And not really human in the fuller sense of the word, because it can be, my resolution is to, I'm not going to get into it directly, but there are some very toxic things and behaviors that you could look at because the culture looks at as healthy.
Right.
And you can fall into. And so, and that includes, being overly obsessed with fitness or health or dieting and things like that.
Right.
But anyway, there's lots of ways to look at this. So, do you got any ideas, or what are your own personal resolutions for this year, Erik?
Yeah. Not doing P90X. Not doing the Peloton either.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were doing P90X.
No. Do I look like it? That would be...
Good. I thought you were there on Saturday, weren't you?
P90X.
Oh, not P90X.
Not Exodus 90.
I thought you said Exodus 90. That's right. Yes. No, of course, not P90X. No, I'm not doing it either. Okay.
All right. So not doing that. I am doing Exodus 90.
Okay, good. Those are different, by the way.
Yeah, and we have a fraternity. We get together on Saturdays.
Yep.
And each year it seems like this fraternity gets split into two groups, and I'm not in your group. So that was 2 years in a row.
I know. I was sad about that, but it's okay.
Yeah, I'm sad both times. You sound real sad.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Real sad.
So doing Exodus 90. That's great. And I'm doing on my own. I'm not doing the Father Mike Schmitz Bible in the Year. But I'm going to try to read through the entire thing in a year using...
the reading plan that they developed? Or?
Not their reading plan. There's a reading plan developed, and in like the 50s, I think, 40s or 50s, by the bishops. And it's kind of a traditional one, and it reads along the Liturgy of the Hours. So like where the Liturgy of the Hours is at in the year, and it follows the liturgical year, of course.
Right.
So December, we read Isaiah, and then Luke. It starts with Advent. So
that makes sense.
We started with it's the Christian year, not the pagan year.
Right.
Don't be
the
a
new
pagan.
year starts in Advent, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
The resolutions
You're
up in January.
So we started with Luke, read through Isaiah, and then January it just drops all of the Pauline epistles, all of them. So I'm not very far. I'm halfway through 2 Corinthians.
That's better than Leviticus, which I feel is a little bit more difficult.
It's the third book in. So
yeah,
it's going well. How about you?
It's been a good year so far. I mean, the end of December was very very challenging, I'd say, because my wife and I had a great Christmas season, and on December 30th we were actually going out to look at Christmas lights, and we had a whole list of places to visit. And 6 hours later, I was becoming more aware of where I was when I found myself in a hospital because of a really terrible car accident, apparently on Taylorsville Road. And I made a turn, never saw somebody, and I don't know. And I pray for them, and I hope things are okay. I know
Absolutely.
Only that they were injured on some level, but no one died. And my car, I imagine, is probably totaled, but I mean, the picture's pretty intense.
Did they haul it back to your house?
No, they took it to a rec yard, and then I saw it 4 or 5 days later.
Yeah.
And so that's been a very challenging experience because when I woke up that morning, I learned that Pope Benedict had passed away during the time from the car accident to the moment I became more aware. So 5 or 6 hours is when he passed away. It felt like a near-death experience, even though I only woke up with a mild concussion and a few bruises. But it was like I found myself in a big white room with a lot of people. I don't know who was there, but my grandma, as far as I know, she passed away in 2016, and she was saying, "Not yet, John." Right? And so that felt like a deep spiritual gift from God to get my attention, maybe, and to prepare me. Many friends of mine said it's one heck of a way to end the year.
Yeah.
Because we woke up on New Year's Eve, and I mean, again, woke up, I was conscious, but I don't remember much. But it was definitely an experience that brought a deeper sense of gratitude, purpose, and what my wife has said many times, and what I feel deeply, is maturity about how to begin a year and to start with a different mindset of not just this gung-ho attitude of, all right, I'm going to make myself better through my own efforts, and not because I was intentionally trying to do it all by myself. But I think as we get older, we start to realize more and more it really is by the grace of God that we even wake up every day.
Put on socks.
Yeah, that we're even capable of putting on socks, sitting upright, talking.
Absolutely.
And so this recognition of God's providence in sparing us, especially because there have been car accidents that didn't look half as bad, that were fatalities, based on what I saw after the fact. And while we're dealing with all the repercussions of that financially, and my head still hurts a little bit. Here it is a couple weeks after the accident, but I don't know. It just set me and my wife on a path to feel more ready, I guess. She's participating in Fiat 90.
Nice.
I'm doing Exodus 90, and that involves all those disciplines. And I hate cold showers. That's always been my thing. But now I don't know. I just feel like I can just deal with it. But I also don't want to I never want to be overly scrupulous or obsessive about any of my failures or shortcomings with that, because it's not like you're sinning if you fail on the discipline.
Sure. So maybe we should just fill people in for those who don't know.
It?
Yeah, it's You start with a fraternity,
Right.
So you're kind of working as a group. I know some people do it individually.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend that.
Not at all. But 90 days, Exodus 90,
Yep.
and there's several different disciplines you do. One of them John mentioned was taking a cold shower every morning. You can't take warm showers. You can't have snacks. You can't watch TV.
No TV, no social media.
No scrolling on your phone.
Unnecessary purchases.
No unnecessary purchases.
Cuts out fast food, by the way.
You have to work out. No alcohol.
Right. And there were several others, but you have a daily examination of conscience each night.
Yeah, there's a spiritual component.
And they give you a guide, which is helpful. And then, of course, your prayer life. So they encourage a daily holy hour, if possible, ideally, with adoration in the church, with the Eucharist. But there's also the opportunity for at least a minimum of 20 minutes of mental prayer if you can't get that hour in, encouraging a rosary if possible. But ways of strengthening your prayer life is also a big component here. So Exodus, I think, gets a bad rap of being focused just on the disciplines, when in truth, the small group, fraternity is so huge, as well as the prayer, that I think that when you look at it with this holistic approach, you end up getting a lot out of it. And it's not just about getting out of all your addictions to social media or worse. I think it's more about just growing in maturity as a man.
Sure.
And brotherhood with other men.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems pretty healthy to me. I like it. Second year doing it. And I think that if you are going to make a New Year's resolution or if you want some change this year, I think maybe finding an Exodus fraternity is a good way to start. Another way, I think that some people might be starting off even smaller than that. Maybe they've committed to spending more time with God or seeking out God. What does that mean at the beginning of the year? So that's why I thought that New Year's resolutions would be a good topic. There might be somebody who stumbles onto this podcast today who's thinking, hey, how can I get closer to God? What are some ways that I can do that? And I would say one of the best ways is one, going to church.
Right.
Finding a church and going to it. I remember growing up Protestant, they would just say, well, what church do you go to? They're like, one that believes in the Bible. Well, that's going to be most churches.
Right, exactly.
I think we would argue on this podcast the Catholic Church would probably be pretty ideal, especially for those who are seeking, one, because it's the fullness of truth in our opinions and in fact.
Right. Well, you can go back to the 300s and know that this is when the Bible was compiled and who was the one who chose the books.
And who compiled it, sure. And then two, why I would recommend a Catholic church is you here in the U.S. at least, you can find one very easily.
Yes.
And I think that might be pretty universal too, not just to the U.S., that you can find a church easily that you can get connected with. Especially, I think I'm speaking here to more people who have been, we've gone through this pandemic the last couple of years. People have, I would imagine there's more shut-ins than ever before. I'm sure a lot of people have some anxiety, maybe some issues they're dealing with, addictions, despair. I'm just thinking of all these things. Going to church, it's about encountering a person, and that person is Jesus Christ. That's the first person you should be encountering when you go to church.
Yes.
But he's not the only one. You encounter other people, and you can build community and relationships. We talked about with Exodus 90 the importance of brotherhood and the importance of fraternity. But within a church, you can find role models and people to look up to. You can find people who need you. I think a second way that's really good, that you can get closer to God or to know God better, is outside of the church, is through the Bible, next to the church. So picking up a Bible and reading it. That requires a little less, I think, from people as a start. Going into a building, and we just talked about it, like interacting with others might be too big a first step for some. But interacting with the Bible, it's just a book, but it's amazing how much of a two-way communication there is between yourself and God. So picking up a Bible. We were talking about the Bible in the Year podcast and reading it. Very popular.
Well, what an easy way to help people ease their way in, right?
Yeah.
And if Bible in a year is a little bit too intense.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Right.
Reading the whole thing cover to cover.
Right. My recommendation is open it once and read a passage, read a chapter.
Yeah.
Start with the Gospels, perhaps. I was always told in my short time in seminary, which was a big step in my life. I mean, there were so many gradual things that led me to even consider seminary for the short semester I was there. But they recommended starting by reading the Gospels. And
I would agree.
Simple. But if you're not even there yet.
Have you ever heard of St. Jerome's recommendation of how to which order?
No, which?
It's just like
this would be great. Yeah.
It's just absolutely insane. Like he gives his reasoning behind it, and it's all really smart. But like I forget which book he picks, but like the Gospels are later on. He's like, you won't get that till later. Start with Job. Like it's just like very. And he starts with something very.
Job's not too bad.
I don't think so. I mean, that's probably the earliest.
Yeah, and you think about it. A lot of times when people are ready to be committed to that kind of thing, they're going to be in an oftentimes desperate or painful situation,
sure.
Right? They're going to be looking like, where else do I turn but God? And so reading Job, I think they can relate to Job because he had a lot of misfortune, a lot of suffering, and he cried out to God, and God heard his prayer.
And I think some people see, just from their little bit of exposure to Christianity, a little bit of exposure to the Bible, they see Christianity as being this strange alternative where you can, have this cognitive dissonance between reality and then you have this faith life, and that faith life is just this made up thing. You hear people say, religion is a crutch,
or the opium of the masses,
or that's I think that's Mao who said that. Yeah. So the opium of the masses. Yeah. So to think that religion or the Bible is that way, if you want, I don't know of any other piece of literature that relates to the human experience and all of its sufferings and how man relates to God better than the book of Job. And it is the most ancient text in the Bible, scholars believe.
Really?
That it's the oldest book chronologically in terms of what we have.
And older than Genesis.
Yeah, Genesis might have been committed to, there's a lot of controversy with that.
Sure.
So obviously, the traditional view is that it dates back to Moses. But even in Job, if you look at Job, the contents of the story can be dated before, not in terms of chronology of Genesis, but older than Moses for sure. So, so it makes even if you look at it in the traditional perspective, Genesis, the first book, talks about the oldest thing, but Moses is ascribed to have written it. Job lived before Moses, so this could have been written down even before Moses had committed, and maybe not even writing down, but the oral tradition of Genesis and the first.
And as I
books of the
remember,
Bible.
when we were going through Bible in a year, the early days actually also covered a lot of the book of Job. Yeah. So they talked about that too. And so in relationship,
I was talking to a friend about this today. I think it went back and forth between Genesis and Job.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And to me, it's that connection between the chaos of human suffering that many people try to avoid, but in avoiding it and running away from it, oftentimes we can perpetuate it and make it worse.
Yeah.
And that chaos is what the Holy Spirit is hovering over, because the chaos is the great nothingness, the vacuum of emptiness and despair and self-hatred or hatred of others that we might feel in our various situations, the feeling of isolation. And when we get in touch with our own nothingness, then suddenly, where else can we go but to the ultimate something, the ultimate source of everything, which is hovering over, like a mother would hover over its child who's having a nightmare, right in the very moments before the mother would then awaken the child and comfort it and say, I'm here, and bring order and safety back into their heart and mind. And so in the same way, I think this is what God does over our suffering, our chaos, and this is what Genesis is. And to me, it's not just about a bunch of theoretical, theological speculation about this or that. It's not meant to be vague or ambiguous, right? It's meant to be specific and focused on each individual person in their journey, in their story, in who they are, where they've been, what they've done, how they've felt about themselves or others. And so that they can then make sense of any of that suffering, so as to tell a story with confidence, because now they're working their way through it. Doesn't mean they've arrived.
Right.
Not that we are perfectly healed of everything we've ever been through, but that we are healed enough or confident enough in God's love and in the love of others.
Or have a great hope through the midst of
Right.
whatever we're suffering,
Right.
To push through.
And that hope gives us the confidence by which to tell our story and to continue not in this quest for perpetual self-improvement, which is what a lot of secular New Year's resolutions fall into, but more into this desire to give of myself more intentionally and in a renewed way, which is, I think,
Right.
what the Catholic movement is all about. The Bible in a year is meant to help you understand your own story as it relates to the big story, so that then you can participate in society.
Do you know this word, narrativity?
I've not heard.
Narrativity.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah. So
What?
it's not just the expression of some theological concept. It is, but it's through a narrative, through
Yes.
a story, and that's how we understand things. That's how we were made to understand things, is through narrativity. And we each have a story. So, I mean, each human person, I tell people this all the time, like, I mean, just like Job, he cries out, to God about how could this happen to me? Why would you do this? And he was very faithful to God, and he lost everything, children, all of his property, everything. And people, it's no different than people now. People lose very much. People still lose children or
Yes.
grandparents, parents, loved ones, and they lose their finances, they lose their health, all of these sorts of things. And it's easy to cry out in the same manner, and ask, well, where is God in all of this suffering? And really, the answer doesn't change. It's a great mystery. When you lose someone, that each human, each person, their whole story, and by mystery, we've spoke about this before on the podcast. It's not like Zoink Scoob, like it's not a Scooby-Doo mystery that we can solve at the end and pull the mask off.
Right.
But it's just a mystery means that it doesn't mean there's not an answer. It means that it's infinitely knowable.
Yeah.
That we can think about this from now to the rest of our lives. And my grandmother who passed, my mama, I could say, all right, well, if I just started thinking, what if she lived another year? What would her life look like? And I could just endlessly think of things we could have done.
Yeah.
What if she died 5 years sooner? What if I never met her? What if she never met my grandfather? What if her parents? Each person is just such a depth that, of course, the loss of any soul from this earth is going to be such a great mystery that you could contemplate it forever.
Yes.
and come up short, because each individual is of infinite worth, especially in the eyes of God.
Well, it's like the fact that my wife and I literally almost died 2 weeks ago. I mean, if we had driven the car 1 foot further,
Sure.
everyone could have died in that wreck. Anything could have happened.
It's a mystery, right?
It's an
in that
absolute
sense.
mystery, and it gives me this sense of affirmation and confidence in God's love for me and my wife, that He would preserve us, He would have protected us, and He would have instilled within us that awareness. Because how many people get into car accidents and things like this happen to them, and they don't change at all. They don't get into better habits. They don't let it be
Sure.
an opportunity for growth or conversion or change of any kind. And so they just perpetually
They don't start
fall
doing
into their own misery.
P90X.
Right, they don't get into P90X and change their life. Right. No, but it's, to me, it's like everyone hits critical moments in their life.
Sure.
Where you can go in one direction or the other. You can continue down this path of betrayal, addiction, divorce, division, or death. Or you can say, you know what? I might still struggle here and there.
Yeah.
But I am going to strive more deeply with a greater sense of resolution and commitment. I'm going to be resolved in my attitude about life, about love, about others, about myself, my own behavior, so that I can be better. Not better like the world thinks, but better in the fullest sense of what we're talking about. And man, it's such a mystery, like you said, but what is it? It's so worthwhile trying to understand it.
Yeah.
Because when you don't, it's like empty.
Have you ever seen the movie The Tree of Life? The Terrence Malick movie from, I think, 2011.
I might have. I can't remember. It's been a while.
I think it's got Brad Pitt in it.
Yeah.
Sean Penn. It's a great movie, and it's been so long since I've seen it, but I absolutely love the movie, and it's hard to find. It's not, it came out in 2011. That's before all these streaming services, but it's kind of like near the end of DVDs somehow. Like it just makes it like super difficult to find. And I think, if Terrence Malick doesn't consider it like his masterpiece, he definitely should. Thus far, he's making a movie on Christ now.
Really?
So yeah, pray that comes out well.
Yeah.
But this movie, I mean, in this movie, I'm not saying anything about the Life of Christ movie he's working on, but in this movie, he gets it. I mean, he really gets it in a way that, you hear Mozart or Beethoven and you think, wow, they really get it.
Yeah.
Or you see the works of Michelangelo or Raphael and you go, wow, they get it. But in this movie, at the beginning, they have like a teenage son who dies in an accident. And they're like around the dinner table, like talking about, how could this happen? Why would God let this happen? Da, da, da. And I remember thinking, like, last time I watched it, the earlier when I'd seen it, I didn't get any of this. I just thought, man, this is a trippy movie, man. Kind of thing. Like, that was about my level of cognition at that time.
Sure.
But this last time I was watching, I'm like, this really sounds like the book of Job. And, like, the movie immediately cuts to black, and it has the quote that God responds to Job when he questions God. Like the first 4 lines, where were you when the sons of men? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And basically, and then it goes into this scene and it has space. It's like outer space and like the creation of the cosmos. And all the way up to, it zooms out to this meteor, and this meteor just gets plunked loose and starts heading across space. And it heads to Earth, and it's the meteor that kills off the dinosaurs. So there's dinosaurs running around, and then the world's biggest explosion. It shows it from space, so it's and it's like a giant nuke, and it's saying what God responds to Job, which is, where were you when this vast creation was made? You can't comprehend it. It's too vast for you to comprehend everything as individuals. And it will, and I think that one of the threads in the movie is that, it'll make sense in the end. It's a highly Christian seeming perspective. Terrence Malick's a pretty, he keeps a low profile. He's a mysterious guy in the other sense. He is infinitely knowable like every other human person.
Right.
But he is kind of mysterious more in the Scooby-Doo sense we're talking about. So I don't know what his Life of Christ film that he's making will be like. But yeah, it does. It really shows. If one were to not even want to break open the scripture and read Job or start to read the Bible, but want to know what I think is a good, summary of what the book of Job has to say, it would be, and maybe in some way, much of Scripture says, it would be that movie.
Right, but it also sounds to me, if it's titled The Tree of Life,
Yeah.
it also has something to do with Genesis.
Oh yeah. Oh
as
yeah.
well. Like there's that deep, intimate connection.
Like I said, it's very, very scripturally rich. Oh, when it has the creation scene and that the asteroid breaking loose, it starts playing Lacrimosa, which Mozart wrote. Mozart, I don't know if you know anything about Mozart, but near the end of his life, he had become famous. All these wealthy benefactors wanted him to write a portion for their funeral mass, the Sanctus or whatever,
Sure.
portion, the offertory, whatever portion of the mass. So he'd written all these masses for these wealthy benefactors. And he started to become increasingly convinced towards the end of his own life that he was writing his own funeral liturgy.
Wow.
And it's like the ultimate, most beautiful liturgy. But he was writing it for his own death. And it was driving him insane. And he died before he finished Lacrimosa. So them playing it was just like super intense.
Oh my God.
Super intense moment there.
For that to be part of the background and how he brings you into the story of what you're talking about with the Tree of Life. It's to me, reading scripture is a critical element of being faithful, being Christian, being Catholic. And if that's one thing you commit to this year, then that's a worthwhile thing, right? Same
Absolutely.
with going to church and coming to Mass on Sundays.
Or just watching as a first step The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick.
Right. Or just watching a movie, right?
Yeah,
Get in touch with something. One thing I started, and this was what led me to even take the step to say, yeah, I might need counseling. Yeah, I might need a deeper formation and talk to a priest about my life and seek spiritual direction in that sense. All of those things led me to seminary. But before I ever even got in that direction, you know what I started with to take ownership of my own faith? I literally started texting myself prayers. I said, all right, if God exists.
This was on a flip phone.
Yeah, it was on no, it was a BlackBerry.
BlackBerry. That's crazy.
I know. So I had a flip phone. Texting wasn't really easy, but then I got a BlackBerry, and all of a sudden I was texting like a fiend, right?
Yeah, it had like the full QWERTY keyboard.
Yes.
But like, there's no, you'd have to have like Stuart Little
Right, I
fingers.
could never have done this, but I was good at it on the thumbs.
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah.
But I texted myself every day, every other day, little short paragraphs. And I was speaking to God. So I'd say, God, help me. Or, God, I'm really struggling with this. Or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences, I would send myself a text. And that was my way of keeping a record of this stuff. And eventually I saved them and, put them in a Word document or whatever so I wouldn't lose them all. But that was the beginning of my taking ownership of my own faith, of my own prayer life, beyond what my parents did with my sacraments and Catholic grade school and high school and all that. That was good because that was all for my family. But this was me in college, on my own, searching for who I was and giving that kind of stuff a try. And it could be that simple. And if it's even simpler, Jesus, I trust in you. Say that 3 times a day, every day for this whole year. And nothing else. Don't commit to anything else. But don't be closed-minded to any other things that you might express in your faith or your searching. But recognize that those simple steps that we take in our life aren't just for self-help improvement. It's more about learning how to be your truest self. And that self is one of service, of love, of self-gift. Because as John Paul II said, as he often quoted in the Vatican II document Gaudium et Spes,
Great document.
Yeah, man cannot fully find himself except by making a sincere gift of himself. If we do not learn how to get outside of ourselves, then we're never going to help ourselves or improve ourselves. But the mystery here is that you're not just doing stuff for yourself here to make yourself better in these resolutions. You're serving others. And in doing so, you're actually finding fulfillment you're finding happiness, you're deepening your relationships with others, which is the key to a happy, healthy life.
Yeah. The priest yesterday, Passionist. Did you know Passionists had a preaching charism?
I did not.
I didn't know that either. That their homiletic training is apparently pretty intense. So I had somebody who wasn't a Passionist tell me this. So it wasn't like a brag, but they said your typical parish, they might actually have a lot more training in homiletics than your typical priest parochially. But I don't know. I digress. But I had heard a Passionist priest say on Sunday, the loneliest. What's the loneliest word in the English language? Because it's only one letter. I.
That's good.
Yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me.
It reminds me of like an old song from the 60s or 70s. It was, one is the loneliest number that you ever did. Right. And so we can be focused on ourselves, turned inward, and we become isolated, and we never learn intimacy, meaning into me I see, or into that intimacy I see. Into me I see is from the movie The Love Guru. Really?
With Mike Myers.
That's funny. I've heard it in different circles, but I don't know. It just amazes me.
I was at. Yeah. Here's Erik Huff trivia. In 2008, there was a writer's strike in LA, and I was there visiting family. Because of the writer's strike, though.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember the full details. I remember like Jay Leno got in trouble for writing his own jokes or something during it, and they were saying he got, I don't know, big boo-boo there. But anyway, so like the sitcoms and stuff were garbage because like all the Hollywood writers
weren't
doing anything, and but it was also a pretty good year in some ways. Wally came out while I was in LA at the El Capitan, and then across the street that year, we saw the premiere of we didn't go into 3 and watch it. We watched the celebrities go in for The Love Guru with Mike Myers.
Oh yeah,
and it had Justin Timberlake in the movie.
Oh my god,
yeah,
dude, that's crazy.
On that note,
that's good.
Into me I see.
That's right.
I think we should probably take a break, don't we?
Yeah, I think we can take a break. So we'll get into more New Year's resolutions and all that we can do with that in the Catholic world shortly after this message. See you soon. Family Renewal Project is our local Theology of the Body apostolate in service to the Archdiocese of Louisville. They are having a crash course on Theology of the Body on February 3rd and 4th at St. Margaret Mary Catholic Church. This is an incredible opportunity to begin exploring God's master plan for each one of us. Theology of the Body is indeed the answer that we have so desperately needed to this current culture of chaos and confusion. To learn more or to register, go to bit.ly/TLB1-CC-0223, or to see the calendar, go to familyrenewalproject.com/events. Welcome back, everyone, to Spirit and Spire. Today we've been talking about New Year's resolutions and how we can, in the Catholic world, have a new movement, right? We're seeing Exodus 90, Fiat 90, we're seeing Bible in a year, Catechism in a year, all the different new spiritual exercises that people oftentimes jump into in January, so that we can learn how to work out spiritually. Last session we talked a lot about this concept of intimacy and really learning how to... And into me I see. Right, but in a good sense. TM. In a good sense, right? Where we're not isolated, turned in on ourselves. And so, one thing that I think of is, in the church's life, you have not just going to church, reading the Bible, saying prayers, but participating in the community life. And that includes the sacraments, right? So obviously the sacraments of initiation, but you also have the sacraments of your vocation, right? Marriage, holy orders, all of that. Amen. Confession, should be part of our lifestyle. Pretty ongoing, yeah. Right, so a resolution would maybe go to confession. My resolution is to not have to go to confession as much as I do. Well, that's a good desire, I guess, but probably won't be fulfilled till you're in heaven. JP2 went to confession like every 2 weeks until he died. John Paul II did that.
That seems like out of holiness, out of piety, out of true piety.
right. I
Out
don't
of
know
Christian piety.
what all he talked about each time, but I don't know.
That'd be a hard job to be the Pope's confessor.
That would be. I would not know how to do that. But you think about confession, and no matter who you are, whether you're super holy like the Pope, like we perceive or think or hope, or the hardened sinner who feels worthless, going to confession is that moment where you are as clean and free and new as you were on the day of your baptism, right? And I know before we sat down to talk about this, Eric, we were discussing different things that are happening this time of year, and I thought it's interesting that when we started Exodus 90 this year, it was literally on January 9th, which is the baptism of the Lord.
Is that why you're wearing this outfit?
Maybe.
Is that what you're going to say?
I wasn't going to say it, but you had to call it out. So, yes, I have. I thought we were talking about baptism of the Lord today, so I decided to wear my new orange vest and my yellow shirt. So you got the fire of the Holy Spirit and the blue waters of baptism. So there's your...
I knew that you had some liturgical function behind it. I just didn't know what. And then I thought it was a DeSales thing.
No. Then it'd be brown jacket with the orange, and then a white shirt and a brown tie. That's probably how.
Orange and brown. I think it's a classy look.
I think so.
Brown, yeah.
Right. I like it.
Well, this is too. This is pretty excellent.
Well, it's also the first day you've ever seen John in a jacket. Right?
That's true.
Probably because this vest is probably a little, little bright. So I wouldn't go too intense, but who knows? It's a fun.
Just like the man wearing it.
That's right. Thanks, man. I'm pretty bright and new, bright, shiny. But that whole point of this is obviously it's newness, right? The sense of renewal and being inspired to be your truest self and to continue striving for holiness and health in the good sense, right? The holistic sense, not being hyper-focused on any one particular thing. Because you can get really unhealthy. I've met many health fitness pros that all they care about is physical fitness, physical condition, to the detriment of so many other things, including relationships.
Absolutely. And you have to really think about your intent there. Are you getting healthy because you want to live longer, have a better quality of life for those around you and yourself? Or are you trying to get like super jacked so that like you intimidate people or, you can, start a bunch of unhealthy relationships, casual relationships with your great new physique this year? There's certainly undesirable reasons that don't come from a place of charity on why one would, and just even if it's not, something like that, it could just be a place of vanity. It could come from a place of vanity that you just want to look good so that you look good and people notice you. And to some extent, there's a healthy amount of that. Yeah. But to another extent, pride could really, I've seen it with myself, you lose a little bit of weight and pride can find its way in really quick. It's like water. It's like when a pipe bursts, you know things are getting wet.
Yeah, and well, you don't want to like discourage people from working out and caring about physical fitness at all, because I need to work out more myself and eat healthier and
need to do some P90X.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, maybe I'm not quite there yet, but people can go to gyms and work out and do this work. Like this is good stuff, right?
Absolutely.
You should be doing the dishes and learning how to cook good.
In fact, the opposite, being sedentary, sitting around on your phone.
Right.
Again, I know I've said this multiple times, but living in despair, sitting on your couch. What do they call the phone?
The pacifier.
The doom feed.
Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling. Yeah. Got the doom scrolling, the magic devil phone. Like, it can suck you in. It's made.
But you know the old adage where they say,
to do that.
Stop playing video games, they'll rot your brain.
Yeah.
That was like 20 years ago people were saying that, and everybody just laughed it off. And here we are, and I'm like, maybe there's some truth in that.
Well, yeah, of course. And also it's just at one time you could use temperance, but these devices
Yes.
have been manufactured in a way, these programs have been designed in a way to release so much dopamine that they're meant to pull you in and keep you. And they're increasingly better at it. These algorithms, they know you. They know what you like. They know what's going to keep you on the device longer. And it's terrifying on one hand, but on the other hand, it's not healthy for you. And that's the one thing that I want to get across. And you see memes all the time, like, just go for a walk. Like, just get outside for a little while. It's so crazy how much real activities, or go see somebody, how interacting with someone in real life, how much that helps you, and how much of a hindrance interacting with people online can be. I mean, I don't know what it is, but my adrenaline, somebody can say something nice on Facebook. It's not even an argument. I don't get into any kind of social media arguments. I'm not above it. I'm just not on there to do it.
Sure.
But even if somebody says happy birthday on there, it releases so much anxiety. I don't know what it is. Now I've got to respond to this. How do I respond to this?
Right.
You're like thinking about it when you should be present in your own life. And also, there's people from high school, people who come across your life. People are supposed to come in and out of your life as God puts them there.
Yes.
And certainly if your neighbor is in need, maybe it's an elderly lady and she loses her husband, go bring her some dinner, take care of those people around you. But you don't need to know that like some guy you knew your sophomore year of high school's puppy died. Like, it's going to make you really sad.
Right.
And there's nothing you can really do about it. It's not good for you.
No.
It's not good for you.
We as human beings are not designed to take on the entire weight of the world's problems. There was only one person who was made to do that, and that was Jesus.
Right.
And he shows us how to endure the suffering that we are given in our life. But when we try to take on the world's issues, then we can become obsessive and fixated. And I think this is where that the worldview can become either overly negative or overly positive, where you either avoid suffering and you stuff all your problems, or you obsess about them and let them weigh you down and control you.
Absolutely.
And neither are healthy lifestyles.
And also the 24-hour news cycle.
Gosh, it's unnecessary.
And just people, I mean, gosh, if I was plugged in and seeing every little thing that's happening all the time,
Right.
I would obsess. I mean, anyone, any healthy person can become unhealthy by just being too plugged into this. That, of course, I'm going to find something to be really angry about. And then when I do go on my walk, I'm going to be thinking about this angry thing that has nothing to do with my life. It never has. It never will. And I'm making up some imaginary argument in my head, and I'm not even winning that.
Why do you think so many people have anxiety and depression?
I mean, I'm not even winning the argument I'm having that never happened with an imaginary person.
Right. Right. It's not just that people date other people in their minds, right? It's that they have imaginary conflicts with things going on that don't affect you on a deep level.
All the time.
And it doesn't mean we shouldn't be aware and informed citizens, right? And
sure.
This is how we know people's agendas, who we're voting for. This is how we know tragedies that have happened that do affect, on some level, national security.
But I don't think we've been out of an election cycle in 10 years.
Oh, we haven't.
It has. It just seems like, I mean, you turn on the TV and it's still just
always talking about
political anger and
yes.
and despair again. And the one thing that, I kind of want to point out with that is those relationships, your real life. Those are the things that matter. You're not going to agree with your uncle at Thanksgiving every year.
Right.
But like that relationship, like actually matters.
Finding common ground, building trust.
Right.
And finding that love.
And that's
in
part
your
of being a
family.
healthy person.
Right.
Like you and I are on this podcast. We have a lot of similar beliefs, I'm sure. But I'm sure if we sat there and we analyzed like one thing we disagreed on, we could get really super angry.
Everybody could,
with any single person in this world.
My best friend from kindergarten, he's now my brother-in-law. That's a good story for another time.
Sure.
But he and I, when we were kids, we were in scouts together, school together, and we would go over to each other's house. And one night, we had this argument about a word that I pronounced it this way, he pronounced it this other way. And we started getting into it. And it got to the point where we wanted to punch. I mean, we were like throwing punches.
Sure.
And then as we get older, here we are like 20 years later from that.
Who said the word?
We don't even remember what the word was.
No way.
And it's like, what the heck was going on?
Sure.
That we got that mad. But yet today, people would make something that's that small take over their entire life and control their behavior.
Right.
And so what we've been talking about right now is all the chaos that grips people, makes people feel incapable of sticking to resolutions because they let these things pull away, allow them to let those very anxieties be their excuses for not pushing through with fortitude and endurance through the thresholds of habit-forming lifestyle development, which isn't just 21 days and you got a new habit. Current psychologists today say it takes between 90 and 254 days to form a lifelong habit, and that depends on what bad habits you got to get out of just to get into the good habits.
Yeah.
And obviously,
it's tough.
Addictions are on a whole nother level of healing that
Sure.
you have to work through. But we're not just dealing with psychological and mental habits. We're also dealing with the spiritual dimension here.
Yeah.
Because there is an enemy who is intentionally attempting to keep people in their sins, in their addictions, in their bad habits or bad beliefs, right? All the voices and distractions he can throw at a person, he's going to do that. And so I look at it like...
I saw a prayer and it talked about the enemy as described him, I think, as the malicious angel, which is, I mean, it's terrifying, but it's true, right? Yeah.
He has power to a point, but at the end of the day, he is ultimately powerless in the face of the light of God, which is Jesus, right? And so Satan is ultimate darkness. So anything he can do to get you to pay attention to the darkness, to blind us, that will condition us and get us used to this empty, it's almost like you can't see the truth of who you really are and who others really are because of these distractions, these habits, these addictions. And so that when Christ comes in, it's going to be a little painful because you're used to the dark. So when someone turns the lights on, it's going to hurt.
Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
When they get down to the lowest portions of hell, it's not like this fiery...
Right, it's cold.
It's cold and they're frozen. And honestly, I mean, if you look at that, that's how people feel.
Yes.
I mean, they're clearly still of this world. They're not in hell, but it's kind of a hell of their own making here on earth. And you can break free.
Yes.
You can get out of it. You can be in community. You can love others. You can be loved. Like all of these things
in this life.
In this life.
Right.
You don't need to just be sitting at your house staring at things that make you angry, sad, depressed on your phone. Yeah, those things are real and they need to be addressed by the people in that sphere where they're happening. There's always helpers. There's a fire. There's always going to be people there to try to run in and rescue. There's always going to be charities to help take care of things. You have to have faith in God and in the goodness of others too. That in God's providence, He's putting the right people in the right places. If someone has a heart attack, you're not a doctor.
Right.
Unless you're trained on how to use a defibrillator. Is it a defibrillator or defibrillator?
I'm not sure.
I don't even know what it's called. So I'm not grabbing it.
Right, exactly. Not touching it.
So even if you were right there, you need someone qualified. And again, in God and His providence, you have to have faith that that's going to be provided for. The other thing too, people might think again that this is just a crutch, that God's providence, His grace is just a bunch of malarkey. Right. That John Sohl, and the gratefulness that you have for being spared, a worse condition from this car accident you've recently had.
Right.
But I would ask people if they see this, if they hear this, and they don't like how things are now, that their lives look more similar to the cold, the dark, the lifeless, gloomy situation of being stuck on screens, that their relationships aren't as deep as they feel like they should be, or they don't have the relationships that they feel they should have in life, that the first step is to address the giver of all things, the giver of all good things, and ask Jesus Christ to make himself known to them, to ask for these things. These are good things. He will give you these good things, and be persistent in these prayers. Now, don't ask him to be Scrooge McDuck and have like a giant pool full of money that you can like dive into and like spit out of your mouth and stuff. Like in DuckTales. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, you don't need all the materialistic, these things that you think are good but actually aren't. He's not going to give you those things. But if you pray, God, I just want a friend in my life. You know, I want someone
legitimate good.
I want somebody who's scared. And you have to be open to who he's going to put into your life.
Yes.
You don't go, oh, that's not the one I wanted. We can
even develop habits with what kind of friends and people we surround ourselves by, how they speak, how they act, what things they get into, places they visit. And if we really want to find good friends and a healthier life, then it might require letting go of toxic friends.
That's true too.
People leave us. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's so hard. But I go back to the sacramental life of the church. You know, the fact that Exodus 90 for us began on the day of the baptism of the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Which is officially the last day of the Christmas season, technically, right? And so
it's over, folks.
Yeah, it is over, unfortunately, but that's okay. You know, if you go to the old calendar, of course, you got till February 2nd, but you know, which is why I justify keeping my Christmas lights up on my house, partly because I'm lazy and haven't gotten around to taking them down. But
yeah, that's the best reason to use the traditional calendar.
That's right.
But that's why it's great. There's at least two calendars.
Right. I don't want to take my Christmas tree down.
How far does the Eastern calendar go?
I don't know.
We got to find out, because
maybe
we could have a third little wiggle room there. Yeah.
But I look at the baptism in the sense of that is also in its own way of renewal, right? Christ entered the waters of the Jordan River. And here's a fun fact. If you visit Israel and go to the Jordan River, you can take this cup, fill it with water directly from the river, and it's automatically blessed holy water. Because when Christ entered the water, he wasn't sanctified by the water, but he actually sanctified the water itself perpetually.
Right, so you're not allowed to drink it, I guess.
I guess not. You probably shouldn't drink it anyway, right? Regardless. But to me, that speaks of the reality of our human condition, right? Our Protestant brothers and sisters might look at the human person with this sense of we are totally depraved. And only by being covered
like a Calvinist.
It's like we are, human beings by nature are nothing but dung. And we are covered by snow, which is grace of God to make us beautiful.
This is actually Luther, right?
Yeah, it is. And that's not true. It's the exact opposite. Human beings are snow, but we are covered in this dung of this world of sin, of our own darkness. And Christ, and no human being, no engineer is going to be able to separate snow from dung when it's muddy snow, right? Dung-covered snow in a very quick, instantaneous, miraculous way like Christ would, right? And so Christ enters into our human brokenness.
Engineers watching this are like,
I actually can
hold,
do it.
Hold my beer, hold my beer, John Sohl.
Well, you're not going to do it like Jesus does, I'll tell you that.
Right.
In a permanent way, right? And so he enters into our brokenness and brings renewal, brings redemption, brings resolution into our life so that we're capable of encountering our actual self, our deepest identity, so that we are given the greatest gift he could ever give us, and that's me, fully alive, fully redeemed, my truest and happiest personhood that I can actually experience in this life. Now, perfectly and constantly, maybe not. That's okay, because we will still fall short. But yet,
sure.
trusting that through that habitual
I'm a
lifestyle,
testament to that.
Right, me too. But yet through that habitual lifestyle of fall and redemption, death and resurrection, we get used to the denying of ourselves. Just like anybody working out all the time, dieting all the time, they're trying to deny themselves legitimate pleasures of food or whatever.
Drink.
So that they can be healthier physically. So too do we have to deny ourselves, die to ourselves, enter into death in various ways spiritually, so that we can encounter the other side of that death, which is greater confidence, greater self-control, greater discipline, so that we can be more attentive to our family, our friends, our spouse, our brothers, and live the life that God always intended for us. This is what it means when he says, unless you hate your father, mother, brothers, and sisters, and pick up your cross and follow me, you will not ever be happy, and in fact, you will never enter heaven. And it doesn't mean we need to go kill our parents and, then follow Jesus. That's not what this is saying. He's saying, detach from everything, including the most natural goods.
I'm also glad that's not what he's saying.
Right, me too. I'm very glad. Yeah, it's not the purge, everybody. Okay.
Which I didn't live in Louisville at the time, but apparently that happened.
That was kind of terrifying.
Wasn't it a joke? Or?
It was a joke, but the police aren't going to play around with stuff like that.
No.
So that was, concerning.
We knew that about in national news.
The Louisville purge.
It was like 10 years ago.
Maybe we shouldn't give people ideas. No, I get it.
Yeah, that's scary.
But regardless, all that stuff, you got to detach from even the natural goods we're given so that we can see God as the ultimate priority, because God is love. So if we want to love our family or friends or anything that we are given, then why wouldn't we want to love the very source and essence of love himself? Because without loving love, we could never love anything at all, right? Because how else do you love? You know what I'm saying? That to me, I know you can get confusing here. But
without loving love, how can we love? Love.
Stop using the word love. Okay. Love can be a very ambiguous and overly misused word, right? But love in this sense is willing the good of the other, wanting the best for others, and taking practical steps to help them there, right? To invite them there, to encourage. You can't force them, you can't control it.
No.
But you can certainly invite them, just like Christ invites us, to love authentically. And that love, when we get in touch with him, the person of Jesus Christ, can we help others learn how to love? Everyone is seeking in this life. And in fact, Archbishop Fobb, I got to sit with him in a meeting a couple days ago.
Oh, yeah.
And they asked him about how we can help people who are leaving the church. And he said, everyone is searching for something, seeking answers to their questions. But what they're ultimately seeking is a person and a relationship with that person. And that person is Jesus Christ. And
Amen.
If we can introduce them to the person of Jesus Christ, the answers he will give them will make sense, but only in relationship with a person. Outside of that relationship with him, the answers that he would give them would not make sense. And they would just continue to search. But that search is, I think, what everyone is doing when they're doing New Year's resolutions anyway.
And St. Paul says, the wisdom of God is foolishness to the world.
Yes.
So, without that master key, and even with it, you might look foolish,
right,
to everyone else, but really there's a clarity in our own lives. And like I said, if you're not happy with the way things are now, give it a try that Jesus Christ is that person that you're looking for. We're not selling anything here. I'm not a televangelist. There's nothing I can get. I really do. I do this because I genuinely care for the well-being of others, and that's the ultimate thing. That's the number one.
This is why we're doing this podcast, right? I mean, the hope is that we can share any of the things that God has done in our lives and in our families and friends' lives to help shed light on the deeper longing for renewal and and healing that our entire Archdiocese of Louisville so desperately desires. And that includes the cathedral that we're here, continuing to serve, as well as all the parishes and families all the way down to the Tennessee border. And if anyone outside of Louisville is listening to this, I mean, anyone can share this and help people get more deeply in touch with what it even means to set a New Year's resolution and to become their truest self, which I think is maybe better than just saying becoming a better person,
I think to summarize too on some of the points. So, and I think that, I'm not just saying this because I'm in the Archdiocese of Louisville, but
Right.
I think Archbishop Fobb continuously summarizes these things and puts them into perspective well. But the first thing that we went over was you can't take on all the problems of the world in that phone. And remember when he was on the podcast, the first episode,
Mm-hmm.
he told us that we asked him about these things going on in the media and the other parts of the world and the whole weight of the world. And he says, God has given him, the Archbishop of this diocese, and the metropolitan of the entire region,
Right.
I think it's Kentucky and Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty big chunk of the world, in my estimation.
Yeah.
But he says that God has given him a small patch in the vineyard to tend to.
Right.
And he just tends to that. And that's what God's given him. And I would say to others, your patch is probably a little smaller than his.
Yeah. All of
Right?
us. Right.
And all of us, it's, unless you're Pope Francis,
Right.
spiritually speaking, you've got a small patch. Tend to that. Make that your focus. If the media of something going on halfway around the world is taking precedence over it, stop. Tend to your little patch of the vineyard. And then the second point that you just made is that, if you're searching and you don't think you found it, and it doesn't have to be because your grandma was a Christian.
Right.
It doesn't have to be, you might have had some toxicity in your life. Christians aren't perfect. Christianity, has things in its history that aren't perfect, right?
Right.
Individual members of the church are fallible. So give it a shot. If you don't like how things are going now, just give it a try. You have nothing to lose and a whole lot to gain. If you want to feel, truly alive, that you're living your best life, it doesn't mean you're going to be happy all the time.
Right. No.
I've
been there. Right.
You're not going to be anxious ever again, or you're never going to get depressed, or your dog won't die. Doesn't mean anything like that.
No.
But what it means is, we're talking about narrativity, that the story of your life will be the epic adventure that God wants it to be. And it's better than anything you can imagine. Like, my life now is better than any story I could have written for myself, or any the paths I've taken or been given, the opportunities I've been given when I gave them over to God have been far superior than the ones of my own making. And I would say, if anybody out there is listening to this, give it a shot. Just give it a shot.
Yep. And I think if we take that to prayer, I think our New Year's resolutions can really help us know more deeply the love that Jesus has for us, as well as know more deeply ourselves, so that when we learn how to love, or rather, we'll learn how to receive that love of God, then we're more capable of giving of ourselves, of being attentive to others, of helping to put others before ourselves, which is ultimately the thing that will bring a deeper resolve in our own lives for renewal, for redemption, for restoration, which is the whole point of setting these New Year's resolutions. So with that, everybody, it has been an incredible time together. We invite you to consider some of these big things that are coming up. It's never too late to jump into Exodus 90 and give it a try, or Fiat 90, ladies. There's great groups throughout Louisville joining and jumping in. I think we have 15 or 30 guys participating in either Exodus 90 or spiritual exercises, and many different groups of women that are participating. And then, of course, the Catechism of the Year is going on with Father Mike Schmitz. And then Bible in a Year you can always jump into and other things. But with that, be sure to like and subscribe what we have to share with Spirit Spire. And if you like a particular episode, jump back in. I think we've done over 20 episodes now since mid-August of 2022. And we're going to continue doing every Monday. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Please pray for us and we'll pray for you. So God bless you and see you then.